Today is October 21st, 2017, and we are at the Community Media Center in Westminster, Maryland. I am Bill Murphy, interviewing Jim Parker from Roanoke, Virginia, and Vinton, Virginia. Jim, I'd like to start out and ask you of what war were you in and your branch of service that you served in?
I was in the Army and went to the Korean War in 1952 and 53. I was drafted in March the 13th, 1952. I went to Fort Meade, Maryland. From Fort Meade, I went to Camp Breckenridge, Kentucky to take basic training. And from basic training, I was sent overseas to Japan and then into Korea. Start my time over Korea.
Why did you pick the Army as far as the branch that you served in?
I didn't have a chance to pick. We were drafted. In the day that we were drafted, we didn't have a choice. They picked you out. When they started calling out the names, the first two were drafted into the Army. The next person was in the Marines, and that went on until they finished with 60 men in the room that day.
Do you recall your first days in the service?
Yes, I do, very much. My first day in the service was a drawn-out day. We started at 7 o'clock in the morning, but the people didn't show up till 8. They sent us from the post office building to the Army National Guard building to be interviewed and actually get us at the service. At that particular time, of the 60 men in there, 3 of us hadn't had a physical in over a year. So this delayed the trip to Fort Meade this time because 3 of us had to go take a physical before we could be sent out. And we finally arrived at Fort Meade about midnight, of which we would do there at 7:30 for supper, but we named it by midnight. And we had a lot of upset men there when we got there.
What did it feel like as far as going into the military and into the Army at that time?
It was real strange. I had heard before the hurry up and wait situation, and that's exactly what happened to us this time. It was hurry up and wait. And that was my first day in the service.
Tell me about your boot camp training experiences.
We left Fort Meade on our troop train and went to Camp Breckenridge, Kentucky, which is just a few miles east of Evansville, Indiana. Had 18 weeks of basic training, which was very good. I learned a lot, had no problems with it, met a lot of nice men, and we were there 18 weeks, and during those 18 weeks, we was in a company of 300 men. By the time of the 8 weeks was over, we noticed that half of the company was being trained different than our company. And we didn't find this out until the day we left Camp Breckenridge on the 24th of July, when part of them went to Germany and the rest of us went to Japan. And that was how I got assigned to Japan. I was assigned to the 45th Division in Japan.
Do you remember your instructors, Jim, when you were in the boot camp?
No, I don't remember any of their names. No,
Okay.
We lost 2 instructors. They were sent back to Korea for something. I don't have any reason, but we only had them for about 6 weeks, and then they were gone.
How did you get through your training?
I did real good. I had no problems at all. It was all new experience to me, but I did very well in everything I did, so I was pleased with that.
Okay, and you said this was the Korean War?
Yes.
And where did you go?
When I got to Japan, we took a ship, the USNS Black, 14 days from San Francisco to Japan, and 2.5 days in Japan, we were signed I was signed the 45th 179th Infantry Regiment, Company A. All this was made out, and we turned in all of our Class A uniforms and took service uniforms for the Korea. Our rifle, we received everything. And like I say, 2.5 days later, that same boat, USS Black, was waiting to take us to Incheon, Korea. We arrived in Incheon, Korea. It was late in the evening, and we were transported from the boat to shore in landing barges, which they pulled a plank of a board out there with where we got down, we got off the ship on, and got on these landing barges. And it was dark. It was real dark. In fact, when we got off the landing barges, the sergeant told us to hold on to the man in front of you as we walked to an old train. And from that, we went on to tote this train for about half an hour, 45 minutes to Yeongdong-po, Korea. That was the headquarters of the 45th Division. And from there on, I followed the 45th until I went home.
Mm-hmm. What was your job assignment, Jim?
I was actually first was assigned to the as a machine gunner for the 179th Infantry Regiment, Company A. But when we arrived from these, well, I'll back up a little bit. We all had to take schooling, a week's schooling, to learn all about the Korean War, the people in Korea, and we knew what our assignments was going to be a little bit about it in a way. And after 5 days, we transported by trucks to where the 179th was receiving us. At that time, my buddy and I were standing in line, and some man asked us, a sergeant asked us if we would like to fill out some papers. We did. Half hour after that, filling out all the papers, he said, "You are now in the headquarters company, 1st Battalion, 179th Infantry Regiment, in the P&A platoon." And we did not know what the P&A platoon, but it did take us off the front line of Company A, out of the machine guns. So that was a break for us. But I then, as the days went by, I was assigned to in the P&A platoon as an ammunition supply sergeant. But that was the first thing I had after was to be in the ammunition supply.
How did your training, going through basic and everything, prepare you for your assignment with the P&A? We in the basic training, we learned a little bit about everything. Mm-hmm. But when I was assigned to the ammunition supply, I knew nothing about ammunition. So when your companies are in the rear, they try to teach you the best they can to get you, so you know what's going on. And that's how I with the buddies, the 4 of us that was already in there, 2 were already there, so they trained myself and my buddy all about the ammunition, but which was, I was kind of surprised because we handled hand grenades, mortars, rifle ammunition, everything, machine gun ammunition, and it was an experience for me. But they were very particular about how safety-wise, for sure. So, did you see any combat at all, Jim?
Not directly. In the ammunition supply was always just below or within a quarter of a mile of the front lines, so that the troops could get ammunition as quick as possible. The first combat I might get involved with was it was in September. We were going to the front lines, the 179th was, and we were waiting till the tanks moved forward into their positions. It was during the day, and the North Koreans started throwing mortar shells in at us, and this was a surprise to me. We all got in ditches and waited till it was all over with, and then what they were trying to do is reach those tanks, but they couldn't reach them. They were falling short, and they were hitting us. So, but nobody got hurt. All the rounds landed somewhere else. But that was my first experience in the war myself.
Were there many casualties, Jim, in your unit?
The casualties I do not know about. I knew that we had casualties because our ammunition supply dump was about probably 100 yards from the aid station. And in the evenings we'd go down there and we'd see how many we'd lost. And they had quite a few. They did lost quite a few. But I never knew the names of them. Just knew that they were gone because we'd see them laying on, waiting to be hauled, taken back. So.
Tell me about a couple of your most memorable experiences, Jim.
The worst experience I had was in January of 1953. We had moved from the front lines to the rear, and when we moved back for 30 days, all the line soldiers had to turn in their extra supply of ammunition, hand grenades, anything that had extra. And myself and two other men, my buddy, and then a Korean Service Corps, we were going through all this ammunition to find any Class 3 ammo that we would have destroyed. And all this ammunition was in sandbags. That's where they had brought it back to us. So we decided, we told this little Korean, we were going to go through this, and anything he saw that didn't look right, he was to lay it aside. So we started off, I reached in the bag and I pulled out a hand grenade. I looked at it, and all of a sudden when I pulled it out, I heard pop. When I heard pop, I knew that I had pulled a pin on a hand grenade in that sandbag. And just quick thinking, I said, run and jump over the hill, and hoping the Korean knew what I said. And we did, and both of us jumped and rolled overhead and fell into a ditch. As soon as we hit the ground, the first hand grenade went off. For about 5 minutes or so, maybe longer, hand grenades were going off, but all the shrapnel was flying over our heads. So we weren't, any of us, weren't injured at all. But after it was all over with, our company commander came up the hill, and we were up on a hill, wondering what had happened, all this explosion. You know, here we are in the rear. So when I explained it to him what happened, the pin came out. Immediately he said, I know exactly how that happens. He said, all the linemen, when they're on line, they straighten out the collar pin so it slips out of their hand real easy, no jerking at all. So he immediately told the line companies, from now on, you must leave those pins spread out a little bit so this won't happen again. So, but neither one of us, none of the three of us were hurt. But just quick thinking, we only had 8 seconds to get out of the way, but we were really lucky.
Politically wise, how was the war at that time? I know it's been a different era going back to the Korean War, but how did you feel about, you know, going over there and fighting in this war?
I was proud. I was glad that I could protect the country of Korea and the United States. I had no qualms against what I was doing. I was being protected. The whole time I was there, I had no problems at all. I got hit in the head with a rifle. That was by an accident when I was jumped in the ditch. An officer jumped in on top of me, and his rifle fell out of his hand, hit me in the head. But then they tried to fix me up for a Purple Heart. But when I told him how the accident happened, he said, "No, that's not a Purple Heart." So, but that was exciting there.
How do you feel today about, you know, demarcation between North Korea and South Korea, and with the North Koreans over there with the nuclear missile capability and everything? What's your feelings on that?
It is scary. It really does scare me because the only thing we were shelled with was most of the time was mortars from North Korea. And I wasn't involved in the actual combat on lines. We were right below it. Say a couple of 100 yards from it, but it was down in a hill, down off a hill, and we could hear it at night. And we always had to stay. We never took our clothes off. We had to sleep in our clothes. We always had to be prepared. We had flak jackets we wore all the time, and steel helmets. We were warned at night if anything unusual happened. We had a phone. And we were warned if the lines were being breached too much. And we had a lot of rounds going over from our big guns flying over and into North Korea. I don't know how far they were being fired from, but I felt safe. I wasn't scared. I thought I would be, but I was not scared. I did a lot of walking around from different places, and it was just a safe thing. I figured they made it as safe as possible for us.
Okay. Do you have anything else you want to talk about as far as your service?
The one other thing happened, which scared a bunch of us. We were taking this Class 3 ammo. This also happened in January, about a week after we had gone through all of that. We were loading all this 81 and 60 mortars on the back of a truck to be taken to the rear to be destroyed. And on 81 mortars and 60 mortars, there are powder charges on the fins that has something to do with the distance of how far that mortar goes. So we were laying this on the back of a truck, and it was a cold, dry day. And we had about probably 50 rounds already on this truck. And they were laying across the tailgate, and my buddy laid one up there, and all of a sudden, flames shot up from these powders. And every one of the ammunition, those mortars sitting on the back of the fins caught on fire. Flames went high in the air. The truck driver was putting all this ammunition up against the back of the truck, so he was taking it. When that first flames went up, he just jumped over the truck and ran. We all ran and looked back, and the sky was just a solid flames. And it was all happened within seconds because it burnt the powder charges off, and everything was all right. We walked back, we looked at everything. We took all the mortars off and cleaned them all and put them back on the truck. But we pulled off the powder charges off of the rest of the ones that was on the ground. And then I went with the truck driver back to the rear to have it destroyed. And then I got chewed out for that because we weren't supposed to be driving that stuff back. They were supposed to come and get it. So, but that was another exciting time.
Sounds like you're a very lucky man. You know,
Well, I felt, yes.
yeah.
Yeah, we 2 times that, we could have been hurt, but none of us were hurt. It's nothing at all. We were really lucky.
Mm-hmm. All right, now we're going to talk about your life in the service, at the front or under fire. How did you stay in touch with your family
I
during this time?
wrote letters. We wrote letters, and of course, mail from Korea was free. We wrote letters, and we had a postmaster that'd come and pick up your letters, and he would mail them, and then he'd bring you your mail, which we got mailed daily. And if you had anything, we got it daily. So that was really nice. We could have communication with our family back home. And since I had just got married, well, of course, I tried to send a letter at least 2 or 3 times a week. I thought this food situation was great. We were lucky. The ammunition supply was positioned away from the rest of the company, but we had a mess tent about 10 yards from our bunkers, and so they fed us, and it worked out real good. I thought that we always had breakfast, dinner, and supper, and we had some sea rations at times, but not very many times. Most of the time, it was we had a hot meal. We were lucky. In fact, this mess tent was feeding Company C on top of the front lines, and they were taking hot meals to those men on the front lines.
Did you have plenty of supplies, Jim, when you
Yes.
were there? Everything taken care of?
Everything was the supplies were brought to us at night. That was one thing. We had all of our ammunition was unloaded at night. We worked in the daytimes. We actually built a bunker, extra ammunition supply bunker, the 3 months that we were in Heartbreak Ridge. And I didn't mention this. That was my last deployment. We was on Heartbreak Ridge from April of 1953 till July. I left July the 4th.
Did they make a movie in Heartbreak Ridge? Or
I have never seen a
no?
movie. I've never seen
Yeah.
a movie of it.
Yeah, I watch a lot of the old movies, on the
Mhm.
Korean War and that, and there's some great movies.
Oh, yes, they
I
are.
watch
I've seen
on
them, yeah.
cable television. Did you feel any pressure or stress while you were in your position as far as working with the ammo?
Yes, we did have a lot of pressure on us because they would notify us maybe 5 or 10 minutes before we were supposed to receive ammunition, and because the trucks had to come at night because they had to come across the mountain, and then come to us. Then we had to unload that truck, everything off the truck, and then he had to get back out of there before daylight. So then they told us we were going to start supplying napalm for the front lines. I couldn't think of what it was. And so they brought us 5-gallon cans of napalms, and these 5-gallon cans will be positioned out in front of the frontline soldiers with a blasting charge in it. And they would, if the North Koreans or whoever were attacking them, they would set those off, and course, drive them away. So the truck driver brought the ammunition to the cans of napalm to me, and we had to take them up to the front lines. This was the daytime too. So we took a half truckload of the napalm down and put them in a sort of a bunker up there, kind of a big, actually a crater. And we finished that. We came back down off the front. We were right behind the front lines. We came back off that, and I sent the truck driver back home. And by that time, we looked up and saw flames coming up from where we had put the ammunition up there. And the North Koreans must have seen us doing something because they dropped a mortar right in on top of all that cans. So needless to say, we had to get another supply of napalm. And then I taught the troops on the front line how to use the napalm, the blasting caps and everything in there, and that worked out real good. They were really glad to use that. That helped them because it stopped the troops, the North Koreans, from those large masses of them that would come up the front lines.
Mm-hmm. Was there something special that you did for good luck?
I can't remember anything that's special I did. We were careful, even with this ammunition supplying and moving it around. But good luck, I guess we took care of each other. We watched our backs, so there was 4 of us. And one of those buddies came into Korea with me and went out of Korea with me, which we all, even though he changed a different position, he was my buddy. He was the first man I met when I went into Korea, and then we all went home at the same time. The one nice thing that happened to me was July the 1st, 1953. My company commander brought me my Sergeant First Class stripes. I was promoted to Sergeant First Class. Then on July the 4th, he brought me my rotation papers home so I could leave Korea. And by being right near the front lines, he said, and at 3 o'clock this afternoon, I'll send my Jeep to pick you up, and you can spend the night in the rear. So that was a really nice thing to happen to me. And
So how long did you spend, Jim, in Korea?
I went into Korea on September the 1st, 1952, and I left on a ship on the USNS Marine Corp on July the 9th, 1953, excuse me, 52 and 53. The surprise of my life came actually when I entered Korea in September. Being transferred to this school, I meant to mention this earlier, but transferred to this school, we passed a truckload of troops going south. We were going north and they were going south. So we all waved goodbye to them. They were going home and we were just now coming into Korea. And but the first stop we made from this truck taking us from the school to my outfit was the 279th Infantry Regiment. And I said, oh, and it's a medical center there. So, MASH. I got off the truck, asked if I could go asked about my brother. So I went in there and talked to this medic in there, and he said, well, just a minute, I'll go get him for you. Well, I was shocked to see my brother. And he came back in about 5 minutes. He says, your brother went home about 30 minutes ago on a truck. I said, well, I waved goodbye to him, but he didn't know it. He didn't know I was on the same truck. I was going north, he was going south. And at the same time, my younger brother, who was in the Marines, was still in Korea. And I did go get to see him on R&R. I went to Japan and visited with him for a week. So I did get to see my brother, but I missed my brother that close. We all 3 were in Korea in September at the same time.
How did people entertain themselves over in Korea during this time, Jim?
We listened to the radio. We listened, I guess, played games. Entertainment. The USO, I went to 2 USO shows while I was there. I went to one in September when I got there, and then one in June. It was one in June, and which was nice. They took all the company and everybody to it when we was in the rear. Both times we was in the rear. That was nice. I thought it was real nice to see that.
What did you do when you were on leave?
I had a chance to go to Japan to see my brother, so I signed up for a flight to Japan, and I made communication with him. He was going to take some time off, so this was in the very first of April. So, and then we had March 22nd, we had 22 inches of snow, and I thought, oh my gosh, I won't be able to leave there. So, but they did. They took me out anyway on the last of March and took me to Seoul, and I flew out of Seoul and to C-124 Globemaster. You know how big they are. And went to Tokyo, and then he was at the Atsuki Naval Air Station as an MP. And I called him from when I got to the camp there in Tokyo. I called him when I was there. So he told me, he said, well, I'm on duty, I can't talk to you, so you come tomorrow morning early. And then here I am in Japan, didn't know how to get anywhere. He explained to me to get on the train, and on this train it would take me to Atsuki. He said, when you hear the word Atsuki, get up and go get off the train, because it's only going to sit there long enough for everybody to get off and it's gone. And when I saw how they were getting off, those trains stopping, they just pushed people off basically. But I did get to see my brother, and I spent 5 days with him, and we went to see one of our buddies we grew up with, and he was he was in the air base there, and he was at an air station there, and we went and visit with him for about an hour. Then my brother had to go back to duty, so I spent a day walking around Japan, and then flew back to Korea. And while I was gone to Korea, our company moved to the Heartbreak Ridge area, so I missed a chance to move with the company. I moved all the other times, but and every time we moved, it was at night, and we rode in the back of the trucks. So is there anything else?
Okay, we'll go into your later years after you got out of the military. What did you do as a career after the war ended, Jim?
When I got back, I spent from August till December at Fort Meade, and during that time, I needed to know what I wanted to do. But I was a mechanic. I took mechanics training in school, and I wanted to be a mechanic. My daddy was a mechanic, so I took under the GI Bill. I went to work at a Chrysler dealership, and that's my whole life was working with automobiles. Starting off as a mechanic, and then as a shop foreman, as a service manager, and then my last year, I was a warranty administrator. I did paperwork. But my whole time, actually 50 years. I retired at 45, and 5 more years after that, I worked at 10 more years. I worked from 45 to 55, or 45 to 55. I was a part-time work for the same company. And, retired and moved from Roanoke, from Vinton, Virginia, to Carroll Lutheran Village in 2005.
So one of your reasons why you moved to Carroll Lutheran Village and up here in Westminster was for your
my
your children and grandchildren?
My son graduated from college and got a job at Fort Meade, Maryland in 1985, and we stayed in Vinton and traveled back and forth for 20 years, and then in 2005 he said that we needed to come be up here, that all my family had moved out of Roanoke and Vinton, and so we decided to make the move after being we lived in Vinton from 1952 to 2005, and it was after I got married, and we moved to Carroll Lutheran Village, and we really like it up here. It's been real nice. I didn't know anybody but this. Have been real friendly people up here to us.
All right, that'll conclude our interview with you, Jim, and I'd just like to say that you are part of the great generation that really allows for us to be free today. And we thank God for your service and for your time and for today being with us in this Carroll County Oral History Project. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, very much.
Yes, sir.